Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Town of Somers Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. As before, this meeting is being handled by Zoom. The date is November 17th, 2020. Denise, would you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Gio?
Here.
Mr. Hardin?
Here.
Mr. Lansky?
Present.
Mr. Newman?
Here.
Chairman Canistra?
Here.
Thank you.
Paul, can you put a flag up so we could do the pledge? Okay, great. I request everybody that we do the Pledge of Allegiance before we start the meeting. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go right into the agenda. The first item we have this evening is that of Joel Hoffman, an application for a side yard area variance for the placement of a generator and a gas tank in an R80 residential district at 15 Wood Street, Katona. Mr. Hoffman, are you available or here this evening?
I am. I'm both.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Could you briefly describe your application and why you're requesting the variance?
Okay. I guess it has two parts: why I need the generator so much and why I need the variance. I need the generator because this will surprise nobody. My electricity here is unreliable. I was actually out yesterday and the day before as well. I was wondering if I was going to be able to make this call. I've lived in this house for I think 11 or 12 years and lost power about 45 times. The first February I was here, it was snowing, the power went on. I thought, oh, that's too bad. 6 days later, it was still out, and that was not unusual. In the past, I've gone to a hotel when my power goes out, but now my father's wife has stage 4 cancer, and because of coronavirus, I'm being as careful as one could possibly be, and I just don't feel comfortable going to a hotel. So I bit the bullet and said I want to get a generator. Because I have no water without electricity, even, and obviously no heat and so on. So I had a couple contractors come over and we looked at all the possibilities, and the things to juggle are where we can put it, where it will be safe. Where we can put it, where it will be safe, and where we can refuel it in the winter safely. So we looked at all the possibilities and came up with essentially one area. And we tried very hard to squeeze it in, but we were off by just 5 feet. So that's why I'm asking for a variance of 5 more feet, so I can put the LP tank and the generator in before a retaining wall gets in the way.
And Tom, to refresh my memory, this is a 15-yard, a 15-foot side yard setback, and only 10 exists. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And the LP tank and the generator, they have to be 10 feet apart?
Sorry, Vic.
Yes.
Somebody's got to mute themselves. I'm hearing somebody talk in the background.
Yeah, we're hearing a child or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. So continue your question.
Is that they have to be 10 feet apart. And so what we did is we measured sort of like the furthest away we could put the generator, and then 10 feet from that, and then the LP tank, and that's where we ran into the 10 feet versus 15 feet.
Right. And you couldn't move everything just 5 feet more on the property line to not need the variance?
I wish if I could have, it would be done by now. Believe me, I tried. The thing is, and I gave the board a sort of a hand-drawn rough outline. There's a retaining wall next to the driveway, and the retaining wall sort of juts out like this at a given point, and so the generator has to be before the retaining wall juts out, or else the generator will be actually in the driveway, which obviously is not safe. So the trick is getting it sort of like where the retaining wall juts out is the space we have to work with.
Now, you're asking for 2 tanks or 1 tank? If it is 1 tank, it's going to be above ground or below ground?
1 tank above ground.
How many gallon tank, please?
500.
Okay,
That's the submarine kind.
Right.
okay.
Yeah. Forgive me, I'm just learning about all this stuff now. I never knew a whole lot about generators or LP tanks.
Okay, so this is going to be a propane generator, propane-driven generator.
Yeah, propane driven.
Have you spoken with your neighbors about the setback situation?
I've spoken with one in particular who says go ahead, and the other is we still here?
Yep.
Yeah.
We are.
And the other one wanted to make sure that he couldn't see it, so I put an orange cone. I said, let me know if you can see it, and they didn't hear back from him, so I'm assuming he's okay with it.
Good.
I can't imagine he would be able to see it. I didn't, he's like an inch taller than I am, so, but even so, the way his house is actually about half a mile away. It's a very, very long driveway. That's an actual figure, about half a mile. But when the only possibility, and even then I don't think so, is there's like one spot in his driveway, which is next to where the tank would be, but it's still, I think, 50 feet away. I measured it as best I could with a laser. And I just don't see how he'll be able to see it.
And now this generator is going to be wired into your house wiring.
Yeah.
So when your power goes out, you'll get all of your power back.
That's the idea, yeah.
Mhm.
So we're talking about it. You're having a 16K put in generator?
I believe either 20 or 23. I don't remember which.
Okay,
That'll handle your house.
It's a Kohler. Yeah, I spoke with 3 different contractors. I ended up picking the one I thought was best, a platinum level dealer for Kohler.
Yes.
He really seems to, he's the only one who start to finish told me the whole truth about generators. I really like the guy.
that's a nice size generator.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I do trust him, but I thank you for the.
Yeah, you'll be comfortable with that.
No, because I just recently installed a 16K, and trust me, I got air conditioning and a swimming pool, and more than capable of handling the load of what you're putting in.
So wait, if I install this, I'll also have a swimming pool?
No, that's additional.
He said.
Yeah, I see that there was also some discussion here that this placement of the generator location is beneficial also because you don't want to put it, I guess, up a hill where it might be hard to refuel the tank and things like that. So accessibility is what you're really trying to get here, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah, this comes back to what the generator guy told me. He said, once this thing kicks in, after it's been running for a day, he said, you really want to turn it off and check the oil and make sure that it's doing well. And he said to me, if we put it, the other location that was talked about was sort of up on not exactly a ledge, but a plateau. And the issue with that is that if it snows, I would actually have to check the oil. I'd have to be walking next to the retaining wall in a bunch of snow on the ground with, plants in an unplowed area. And he just didn't think that was safe. And, my first thought was, I don't see why we can't put it there. And, he says it's not safe. And he sort of convinced me.
Okay.
And again, if it was safe, we would have done it by now. It would be installed.
Right.
It seems like there's a lot of woods and brush here in between you and your property, your adjacent property owners.
Yeah, a lot of woods, a lot of brush. I sent you a couple of photos. One was sort of the Google photos, and you can see this generator is basically in the middle of nowhere. The closest structure, as I say, is 17 Woods driveway.
Hey,
And I think that's 50 feet.
Joel, sorry to interrupt you. Are you able to screen share some of those photos right now? Do you have them on your machine that you can?
I do actually, yeah.
Yeah, please. I'm going to give you the ability. Can you please share them with us real quick, please?
Yeah, so I've never done this before, so let's see, screen share. Now I think I choose this, share. Okay, this is detail. That's not what I was looking for. Let's see here. It doesn't seem to be letting me. Having a little bit of trouble switching between photos while it's shared. I'm
Okay,
not
if you need
sure
to,
what
you could.
that's give me. I'll
stop
find
the-
the right one and I'll share it again, the one I was talking about.
There we go.
All right, can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine that. I can't, but good. Yeah, what this is, it has 15 Wood Street, it has 19 Wood Street, and 17 Wood Street. You can see those tiny little things where the green arrow is pointing. That's where I'm trying to put this. It's really in the middle of nowhere. 19 Wood Street is completely fine with it. We're very close. We talk all the time. 17 Wood Street, you can see it looks like is completely far away, but in fact, the driveway at one point snakes by. And that's why I measured whether they'll be able to see it from the driveway. And I just don't see how they'll be able to see it even. And look, they're half mile away. When they're home, of course they're not going to see it.
Right, right.
And just in terms of location, can you see the new shot?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is sort of on my property, the generator and the LP tank. It's a little bit off. I didn't get it exactly right. But it's sort of, and the driveway is not just the black part. You can see there were leaves when I took this photo. The generator is actually a little bit further to the left. But the point is that that's the radius that can be refueled during the winter with the refueling truck. The reason I can't put it way further to the left next to the house is that exceeds the range of a hose for refilling the LP tank, unless I'm successfully able to clear much more of the driveway than I normally am during the winter.
Now, I do have a question for you. If I remember correctly, because I used to be in that neck of the woods, your driveway is relatively steep slope?
Yeah, if you look at the part on the screen, you can see there's like a part that before it forks. The fork is a fairly steep slope, yeah.
Okay, but where the turn is, does it still have some grade to it? And up to where the cars park?
The turn, it does have some grade. It's not as steep as the other part. It's currently not blacktopped. I forget the rationale for that, but the driveway person, when I bought the house in foreclosure and did a lot of work on it.
Okay.
So he told me to pave the slope.
Okay, what I'm leading into is this, where the hairpin turn is. Okay, is that relatively flat? Where I'm concerned with, where I see the picture of the car in your driveway. If there's an ice storm, okay, how far is the driveway from the proposed LP tank? So this way, if you do lose control, you're not going to run into the propane tank. Or you plan on putting some post up to protect the?
Oh, I'm going to put up. What I have is in a. Can you see the cursor on my screen?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Yes.
Yeah, these are boulders. And I have some extra, and there's another boulder, I think, somewhere over here. But what I'm planning on doing is putting pretty significant boulders. And I spoke to the generator guy about this too. Pretty significant boulders, so that if I lose control or if a UPS truck is driving up there, I don't know what. But I want to make sure this thing is safe.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're basically protect it with some sort of, not retaining wall, guardrail or stones.
Yeah, with
Yep.
stones. The generator guys spoke to somebody in the something office. I have the email somewhere. We were asking about that, whether stones, boulders would be significant protection, and he thought it would.
Now, because I have to say, looking at this, it looks like there's an area of a turnaround area, right at the hairpin turn there.
This is the turnaround area, yeah.
Yeah, where, say, for instance, again, you mentioned about obstruct, in the sense of, You know, with backing up, sometimes you get careless and we don't want anything to happen.
No, I hear you on that. I want to make sure this thing is big boulders. My experience has been that this is not the dangerous area, but still I want to be safe.
Yeah, Arnie, I think that's a very good point. This thing really should be protected from a car sliding into it or accidentally driving into that LP tank. Obviously, that would be bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the way this actually, this diagram was sort of one revision before. There's another rounded back and forth. So this is not exactly accurate. And I apologize for that. The LP tank will actually be sort of sideways. So it would require quite a lot of skill to get yourself that LP tank. It's the generator that has a little more possibility. But again, we're not going to put it right in the driveway because that would be a real hazard. That's why I need the variance in the first place, is to make sure that it's at least on the side and not in sort of the mainstream traffic area.
And if we
Okay.
decide to approve this tonight, we can always make a condition upon there being some kind of an adequate safety balusters or rocks or something there to prevent a car or truck from sliding into this thing.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I would be grateful because you guys know about this stuff. But I don't.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's, you'll hear about it, but I'll be the one here if something goes wrong. So for sure, I want to make sure this is safe.
All right. Okay. Any other questions of the applicant at this time before I take it out to the public and see if there's any comments? Any discussions amongst the board we want to have regarding this? Okay, let's bring it out to the public. This is the public's opportunity to call in and speak in regard to this application. So if anybody would like to comment, please give us a call now and we'll be happy to put you on.
What is this Catherine Vaccaro thing that I see on my screen?
She's basically just asking what area is this?
Oh, okay.
Is that something I'm supposed to answer? What area is this?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure what it's off Wood Street. I don't know. Do you mean like on the property? Do you mean in the whole town? I'm not quite sure how to answer that.
Oh, can you put back up the comments?
Yep, no problem. Sorry about that.
No problem. Let me see.
There's Route 100 goes up this way. Mosman comes in like this. Off of Mosman is Wood Street. Wood Street goes up like this. That's the area. It's like, there's a box by 35 100 Mosman Wood.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of you, you have Muscoot Farm,
I'm sorry?
Muscoot Park.
Yes, it's near Muscoot Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
Across the way is the forest.
Okay. Yeah, this individual who's commenting here, it says, what is this about power? Well, what this is a generator, just to speak to some generalities here. A generator basically will kick in if you lose power, and it basically generates electricity to run your home and electricity. If the tanks are legal above ground, the tanks are legal to be constructed above ground. And what area is this? We talked about Wood Street. Generock generator gas propane. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people in Somers have generators. There are certain setbacks and requirements. The building department has to take a look at them to make sure they've been connected properly. You have to have a licensed electrician, but they're very, very common in Somers. Actually, I have one for my home, so many people have them. Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah. And the only reason the applicant is before us this evening is because the generator in the tank has to be 15 feet off the property line. He's only got room to put it 10 feet off. So he's looking for a variance of 5 feet in order to put his tank in. And then the generator has to be 10 feet from the supply tank of propane.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else from the public that has any questions or comments regarding this application? Do you have anything else, Paul?
We had a few people join the Zoom. If you have a question, please do that now.
Anyone have a question regarding this application? No?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Does the applicant have anything else to say to us or provide to us at this point in time?
Nothing that comes to mind. I would turn it around and say, is there something I forgot to mention? I mean, this has been an ongoing process for me. I sometimes know it so well that I forget to mention, I know it so I forget to mention things, but thumbnail sketch, my power is completely and totally unreliable. And I can't stay in a hotel. And so I'm trying to do the best I can here. I need electricity for that, and it doesn't fit anywhere without the variance. So.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board or any other discussion we want to have amongst us before we vote on this application? No? Okay, I'll take a motion for the type of action.
Type 2.
Second,
Mr. Gio,
aye.
Mr. Hardin,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'd like to take a motion now for whether we're going to accept or deny the application, and if we accept it, if we're going to put any conditions upon it. Which if we
I'll make a motion to grant the variance, grant the application for a 5-foot area variance contingent upon installation of an appropriate safety barrier.
Second,
I second that.
Okay, Mr. Gio,
aye.
Mr. Hardin,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
and
Aye.
Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, sir. Your application has been granted. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much for your attention and for your help. I really appreciate it.
No problem
You
at all.
got it.
Next item on the agenda this evening is that.
Sorry. Sorry to cut you off. Do you still want me to stay on?
No, it's not necessary. Your application is granted. Just coordinate with Denise in the building department, and she'll, let you know what else you have to do.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening, people.
Okay. So,
So Vic,
yes.
for the record, I really need to know who else is on. And I'm assuming they're more sanitation application.
Okay. So, yeah, when we go on to the next application, we'll try to get kind of a roll as to exactly
Yeah.
who is on.
Record, I need every,
Okay, you need everybody who's on the call. Okay. Or at the
Correct.
meeting. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so next item on the agenda is that of Lawrence Realty LLC. This is an application for 8 area variances for proposed improvements to an existing facility whose tenant is Somer Sanitation, Inc. in an office light industry district at 239 and 241 Route 100 Somers. I assume, Ms. Snyder, you're going to be representing the applicant this evening?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Could you, I know we've gotten plans and quite a bit of other information. Could you kind of take us through the application and what your client is proposing here?
sure, be my pleasure. Good evening, Honorable Chairman, members of the board. My name is Leslie Snyder. I'm a partner in the law firm of Snyder and Snyder, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Somer Sanitation, Inc., together with Rich Caligera from Cornerstone Engineering, in connection with Somer Sanitation's application for area variances in connection with proposed improvements to its existing solid waste transfer and recycling facility at 241 Route 100. The property is located off Route 100 and comprised of approximately 5.2 acres. The property is located in the office and light industry zoning district, where recycling facilities like the facility here is a permitted use. For more than 30 years, Somer Sanitation has been operating a transfer and recycling facility for non-hazardous waste materials to service the town of Somers and the surrounding areas. The applicant has been providing necessary infrastructure to the community. The facility has been designated as the town of Somers recycling facility and the applicant sponsors an annual bulk refuse drop-off, as well as many other community programs. The applicant is seeking to make improvements to its facility in order to comply with the current regulations of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Currently, material accepted at the site is delivered to transfer processing areas, with solid waste delivered to an enclosure which has a roof but no walls. This roof enclosure processing area was approved by your zoning board in 1993 and has been in process since that time. In order to comply with the regulations, the applicant is required to have a fully enclosed building so that all the material that the applicant processes at the site will be handled in a new fully enclosed building prior to being transported to an appropriate off-site location. In addition to the proposed fully enclosed building, the applicant is proposing to replace its existing scale house with an updated scale house to weigh the material and install a water tank and a parking pavilion with a roof and no walls for the applicant's trucks. All of these improvements are shown on our plans. On October 14th, 2020, the Town of Somers Planning Board reviewed the plan and the requested variances for the improvements and unanimously issued a positive recommendation to the zoning board for those said variances. Mr. Calangero of Cornerstone Engineering will discuss these area variants with you in a few minutes. At this time, I'd like to just discuss the standards for area variances. As you're aware, the role of the zoning board is to provide a safety valve and flexibility from the rigid enforcement of the zoning ordinance. The standard for an area variance is set forth in section 267-B of the New York State Town Law. In determining whether to grant the area variances, the zoning board must engage in a balancing test, which is to weigh the benefit to the applicant against any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the community. In making such determination, the zoning board shall consider 5 statutory factors. In connection with this application and in connection with the 5 factors, it is respectfully submitted that first, there'll be no undesirable change produced by the variances on the character of the neighborhood. The variances requested here will not produce any undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood and will not be a detriment to nearby properties. The property is an industrial zone and adjacent to commercial property on the east side, such that the side yard variances for the scale house and the relocated outbound scale will not have any adverse effect on the adjacent commercial property. Similarly, the variance for the parking pavilion will have no adverse effect on the western adjacent properties, since that property is also used for industrial purposes and controlled by the same party as the property owner here. A small portion of the property is in the northwestern corner, which abuts a residential zone, but the adjacent property is not used for residential purposes, nor would it ever likely be used for residential purposes due to the heavily wooded area and steep slopes. That property is owned by the same property as the commercial property to the east. The variance for the 10-foot vegetated buffer on that northwestern corner abuts the adjacent wooded property, so there's ample screening of the water tank proposed in that area from view. The applicant is not proposing any expansion to the current operations of the facility, but merely to construct improvements to comply with the regulations. The new fully enclosed building and other improvements have been situated so it will not be visible to New York State Route 100 or the surrounding neighborhood, and the existing vegetative buffers will shield the facility from view. In addition, the water tank that's proposed will be painted a neutral color to blend in with the surrounding area, so it will have no adverse visual impact on the neighborhood. Therefore, the proposal will have no adverse impact to the surrounding area. Second, the benefit of the variances cannot be achieved by any other method. The need for the variances are a result of the configuration and topography of the property. There's no other method other than the requested area variances for the applicant to pursue in order to make improvements to its facility in order to comply with the current DEC regulations. Third, the nature of the variances are not substantial. The variances are noted for the applicant to comply with the regulations. The requested variances are not substantial in light of the industrial nature of the commercial area and the fact that the variances will have no adverse impact to that area. Fourth, the variances will have no adverse effect on the environmental conditions of the neighborhood. The applicant has already been operating the facility at the property for over 30 years, and the variances are simply required in order to make necessary improvements to the facility so it can comply with the DEC regulations. The regulations require the building to be fully closed, which the DEC has determined to be a benefit to the environment. The fully enclosed building will enhance the applicant's operations and allow materials to be processed more efficiently. By granting the variances for the improvements, the zoning board will be allowing improvements to enhance the facility's existing appearance. There'll be no adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood by granting the variances. And finally, the variances are not self-created, but are really necessitated by the need for the improvements to the facility in order to comply with the current DEC regulations. At this time, I would ask that Mr. Calangero briefly review the variances with you to provide any clarification so you can see the exact 8 variances that we're requesting.
Thanks, Leslie. Just one thing to clarify on one of the items that Leslie mentioned. The existing building does have walls, but the front of the building is completely open, and there's a rear entrance which is open, and there are no doors. So there's walls on the 2 sides of the building. It's not just an open.
I'm glad you cleared that up because I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, so there are walls to the building, but there are no doors. And
It's not fully enclosed, so I apologize.
The recent change with the New York State regulations require that all activities occur fully within the building, meaning that the trucks will need to get into the building to tip fully, whereas previously they didn't have to. They just had to have the back ends of the vehicles into the building. So that's why we're here to talk to you about the variances that are needed in order to put the building up that's adequate size to allow for all of the activities to occur in the enclosed building. So we've got eight variances. The first is the coverage. So we're looking, the existing facility is operating, we're covering about 68% of the property with either buildings or access roads or areas where trucks park or maneuver and whatnot. So we're basically looking to just bump that up by a hair. There's an area, and perhaps I should show you, we'll put the plan up. That might be helpful.
From my reading of the documents, it appears that I guess you're going to be paving over certain areas that are just maybe hard pack at this point in time. And that's where we get from impervious or pervious to impervious.
Yeah, exactly, because there's portions of the site, what is considered site coverage, that is hard packed gravel and or asphalt millings now. And those areas will be paved. And so for stormwater purposes, when we do our calculations, the hard packed gravel and the millings area, they're not considered impervious, although some of the areas that are asphalt millings really seem like you're on asphalt. You know, they've had large vehicles riding over them for 30 plus years. But most of the site, this is the, can you see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So this is the proposed plan as it stands. There's a small area in here in the existing facility that has some grassy areas, and that's an area where the local residents can drop off waste, where what the facility likes to call mom and pops, the small operators, can drop off material. So
Basically what you're saying is everything for disposal, taken off by hand versus dumping.
Pretty much. And that's gonna happen in the new building, when it's built. So pretty much this, there's this large area is existing, site coverage. So we're not really looking to change it. That's the issue with site coverage. We're about 68% now, and we're gonna be at 69 with this proposed plan.
So we're asking for a variance of 9% on that.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I may be asking this question prematurely.
Okay.
With the new configuration of the scales. Okay, I've been there numerous times, and depends upon what time of the day, there's a line all the way out to Route 100. Is this going to alleviate some of that traffic coming in the sense of two scales, or just, if I read it correctly, you can have two scales? Because one I understood was for commercial purposes for yourself, and the other one was for the general public and the normal carters coming in and out. Is there going to be two scales, so this way people can, get off of Route 100 easier?
There are two scales. There will be two scales. This scale, if you can see my cursor, this existing scale, will be the inbound scale. So all vehicles coming in will cross this inbound. This scale will be the outbound scale. There's an existing scale approximately right here that's outbound, but we're also going to be installing a scale in the tunnel here, where the tractor trailers will be weighed as they're loaded. So
When they're being loaded.
Excuse me?
When they're being loaded.
When they're being loaded. So when they meet their weight, they'll be taken out and either parked in the pavilion or taken off site and onto their destination, whether it's a disposal or a recycling facility. So they won't be crossing the scale again. So that should help to alleviate some of the traffic perhaps that you've experienced.
Now, because I will say was that I'm a little confused about, because right now there are two separate scales existing right now.
Correct.
One I'm assuming was for their own use, and one for the general public and the carters.
Now, I believe they're both scales today. As with the plan that we have, the one scale is for inbound and the other scale is for outbound.
Okay.
So,
And that's not the way they've ever been used, right? Anytime I've ever been there, it's the same scale, inbound and outbound, and you rotate one car inbound, one car outbound, one car inbound. That's what creates the backup that Arnie's mentioning. So I guess now that they'll actually have those two scales side by side, that there would be one inbound and one outbound, which would help alleviate that backup.
correct.
Exactly.
The plan is for one to be inbound and one to be outbound. The one on the east side would be the inbound, and the one on the left, the west, would be the outbound, which would make sense.
Okay, thank you.
So our second variance request is the height variance. And we've got a bit of a dilemma with that, because we had, in our application, we were requesting a 4-foot variance over the allowed building height of 30 feet. This was based on the building height at the front of the main transfer station building right here on the east side. Upon further review and some discussion this morning, on reviewing the definition of building height, we had we had some questions as to how that was supposed to be calculated. And I'm going to bring up I'm going to stop sharing this, and I will bring up the elevations. You can see this.
Yeah,
You can see it.
Okay, so this is the front of the transfer station. 4 large doors for commercial vehicles, the 2 smaller doors on the east end on the little part of the building that kind of juts off on an angle will be for customers, mom and pops, and also for but so we have a roof elevation in the front of the building at 299 feet above sea level. The ground surface there is 265, hence the 34-foot elevation. But in reading your code a couple of times today, many times today, actually, it talks about ground surface elevations, and it wasn't quite clear if it was the average ground surface, the mean ground surface around the entire building, or if it was on the highest wall it talks about. So the highest wall is on the south side of the building, which faces the parking pavilion. And we've got a mean roof elevation. We've got a 4% slope. The high point of the roof is in the front and it slopes towards the back. So we have a mean roof elevation of 297 feet. The ground surface on this side and around the back of the building is 258 feet. That would give us a roof height at the mean of 39 feet. So then that would mean our variance request would have to be for 9 feet. So then the other thing that we looked at was the mean ground surface. So the mean ground surface elevation around the entire building is right around 260 feet. So if you look at that, we are looking at a variance of about 7 feet for that 297 to 260. So I think what we're looking for on a height elevation is this highest wall 9-foot variance. So apologize for not getting that straight a couple of weeks ago when we made the submittal, but I think we want to get it right before we move forward.
Yeah, Tom, what is your opinion on what height variance should be requested here based on the various elevations around the building?
Yeah, I would say take the mean height of the average grade around the entire perimeter of the building, not the highest point of the roof.
Okay, so where's that going to put us as far as the variance they should be requesting here?
7 feet.
About 7 feet, right?
I do have a question on the elevation. I'm looking at the proposed transfer station elevation page, sheet 3.
Yep.
And at the highest point, the ground elevation is 258. They put the plan up for. I think you said something.
No,
The applicant mentioned a different height.
The elevation of the ground surface at the front of the building on the east side is 265 feet. The ground surface elevation on the south and west sides is 258 feet.
Okay, that's the side I'm looking at. All right. I thought I heard a different number. Never mind. That's fine.
All right, so it sounds like
The variance you're asking for here is for 7 feet then.
if that's the way it's interpreted, it's it's kind of a little bit of a roundabout description of building height, so it was a little confusing. That's why, we have the three, three alternatives, I guess.
Okay.
But I think now it's been
Yeah, but-
clarified that it should be 7 feet, even though using the numbers that Tom indicated.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Okay.
So, all right, the next,
Just to back up 1 minute, so the requirement for the higher height of the
Okay,
roof
yeah.
here is because I believe from my reading, when you bring trucks in there, you have to make sure they can dump their loads and there's going to be adequate space to do that, right? I mean, that's
That's exactly right. I should have brought that up, but
okay. There is a need for it. It's not just
yeah, we need that height in order to have the door size, because the doors roll up, and to be able to get the trucks in there to tip their the material they bring in fully inside the building. We need that height, correct?
okay.
We included a memorandum from Cornerstone that documented the need for all the variances in the packet.
So the third variance has to do with the northwest northern corner up here that abuts the residential district that Leslie mentioned earlier.
Right.
So the code calls for a 50-foot vegetated buffer in areas that abut residential. As she indicated, there's a slope that goes up the hill to Highview Terrace. The nearest backyard that you can see on Google Earth is about 450 feet away from the property line. A change of over 100 feet in elevation in that area. So it's pretty steep. It'd be hard pressed, I think, for that to ever be developed.
Have you approached the neighbor and asked whether or not they object to this application?
Well, as Leslie mentioned, the property owners on the adjacent property is Majestic.
Yeah,
The owner and operators, or at least the owners of the property to the east.
and they're aware of the application.
Yeah, but that wasn't my question. And the fact that it's not developed doesn't mean that someone might not show up later and want to develop it. And out of all the uses, this is a use where residential neighborhoods get kind of squeamish. So I'd kind of like to see a letter or something from them that they don't object that, at least the residential property owner who's adjacent.
Well, the property owner that's adjacent is not residential property. That's actually, it's residentially zoned, but it's actually used commercially. Majestic, who owns also the property on the other side of the driveway in there.
This area.
This area,
Okay.
it's the same. They bought that for a buffer for their own property. It's essentially a very steep area and it's a buffer.
It's still residential property.
It's
It's
residentially
both.
zoned, correct, but it's not residentially used, nor could it probably ever be.
That's my question.
Okay. Just to let me go to the existing plan, which I'm sure you've seen, but let's what's out there right now.
If I may interrupt for a second, what is the water tank used for?
That will be for fire suppression.
Yeah, I did notice that tank was, if I'm reading it right, that says 50,000 gallons. That's a pretty big tank.
It is a big tank, but based on the size of the building and the material handled in it, That's what the building code requires.
Okay.
So here, can you see the screen now?
Yep.
So this is the existing conditions. This is what's there now. Here's the two scales. Here's the entrance coming in. This is the existing transfer building. It's literally this back wall is literally on the property line. This is the other entrance in the back. This is the entrance in the front that I mentioned. The trailers are parked right here. It's open air. It's a containment structure. There's a leachate collection, so any water that falls on this area or gets into any of these loaded trailers is collected and stored in a double-walled underground tank and pumped out as needed. So there's already the facility already has activities literally on the property line, and what we're asking for is a variance from the buffer, and we will put a 10-foot buffer, and we'll plan it with evergreens and the like to help as a barrier. But there's just no way. There's no way to move 50 feet off and then have the setback from that.
I wasn't suggesting that you needed to move 50 feet off.
I know. I'm just explaining why we need the variance. You're asking for a letter.
I'm asking for you to confer with your neighbor, and the fact that they're aware of the application isn't my question. I'm asking because it's residentially zoned property, and they may choose to develop it. And so if there's a certain kind of tree or a certain thing that they'd like you to do, I think it might be a neighborly thing to do. 50 feet to 10 feet is a huge difference. And to say you're going to do whatever you're going to do, and that their input doesn't matter. I don't know how I feel about that.
No,
so,
I didn't. Let me just clarify. One, they're aware of it. And my understanding is they don't have any objection. But just so you know, right now our enclosure is on their line. So now we've actually created a buffer, and we'll put trees, and we will confer with them, about the trees as well. But there'll be more of a buffer for them than they currently have on their property.
that's great. And all I was asking for was a letter saying no objection.
Okay, we'll
That's
speak
it.
to them.
Question in regard to the tank in the northwest corner. How tall is that water tank? I'm trying to understand the size of the tank.
I think it's about 20 feet tall.
Okay. And do you know what the diameter is of the tank?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
This is the scale, so.
It looks like it's 10 feet wide.
Yeah, about that, I guess.
Yeah, up in your upper top corner.
Yep.
Proposed 10 feet wide, if I'm reading it correctly.
I don't think that's it.
Or is that the buffer? Oh, I'm sorry, it's the
That's a
buffer.
10-foot buffer.
Take that back.
Yep, 10-foot buffer. So
Yeah.
The diameter is more than 10 feet. It's
Yeah.
probably 20.
20 by
Oh,
20.
It's 12 feet, it says.
Says 12 feet.
No, so that 12 feet is, the tank would be 12 feet from the property line, 2 feet from
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm saying maybe it's 20 feet wide tank and 20
Yeah.
feet high.
it's about a 20 by 20 tank, give or
Yeah.
take.
Okay.
Thank you.
Some kind of connections to the tank so the fire department could hook up hoses and whatever to extinguish a fire if it occurred on the property, right? That's the idea of the tank?
Well, the building will have fire suppression. It'll be connected to that. And
Oh, okay. So that's the source of the water for the fire.
exactly.
I see. Okay. Okay, please continue.
Okay, so that is the buffer and the tank, and the variances we need associated with them. The minimum side yard for the scale house, as Leslie mentioned, the new scale house, the outbound scale, and the parking pavilion and the water tank, we need side yard setback variances. So as we talked about earlier, there's an existing scale that's already within the 40-foot side yard setback. We are going to relocate the scale or put a new one in, I'm not sure. But the existing scale is here. We want to move it closer to the inbound scale so that and put a new scale house between the two scales, so for efficiency. The operators in there can then handle both the inbound and the outbound. I believe part of the problem right now is that the inbound scale, the truck drivers have to get out of their trucks and go to the scale house that's over by the outbound scale if they need tickets. So the scale house is within the 40-foot buffer, but it's further away than the existing scale, and the outbound scale will be partially within the 40-foot setback. So the new scale house is 24 feet from the property line, necessitating a 16-foot variance, and the relocated outbound scale is 31 feet from the property line at its closest point, necessitating a 9-foot variance from this property line here with Majestic. And again, this area all right in here is all wooded, and it's a pretty good slope by these contours. And this is the back of their building, so there's really no to the adjacent property owner. The parking pavilion is over here. So this will be a covered pavilion where loaded trailers can be parked. So currently the trailers are parked generally in the open, and that generates a lot of stormwater that comes into contact with the vehicles and with their parking area. So all of that water is then considered leachate and has to be contained in the tank that I mentioned earlier and trucked off site for disposal. With the roof on it, the amount of leachate that is generated by stormwater will be significantly reduced. So the parking pavilion is obviously also within the 40-foot setback. It's 10 feet from the property line, necessitating a 30-foot variance. As Leslie said, the property owner, Bria Realty, also owns this adjacent lot 11. So there's really no issues there with the adjacent property owner. The water tank, which we discussed before, there's the 40-foot required setback, and we are looking to have it 2 feet from the buffer, which would be a 38-foot variance request.
Yeah, that's a little confusing because you do have asterisks there where you kind of explain,
Yeah.
it's a 50-foot wide buffer, but
So it's a 50-foot buff. So the code reads that the code requires a 50-foot vegetated buffer adjacent to residential, and then 40-foot setback from the edge of that buffer. So we're requesting a 40-foot variance for the buffer, resulting in a 10-foot buffer, and then a 38-foot variance on the setback from that buffer. So it is a little confusing.
yeah, I'm a little,
Yeah.
so is it basically, you need 50 feet, you're providing 12, and 38 is what your variance is requested? Is that what we're coming down to?
I believe so, yes.
Because I think it's just 50 feet. I'm not sure that's the 50, I think it's just 50 feet from the property line.
The buffer is 50 feet, and then the
Well, the
setback
buffer's only 12.
40 is, the setback is 40 feet from the buffer.
It's really, once you give us, you give the variance for the buffer, then it's off of whatever the buffer is.
Got it.
Okay.
Well, the other thing that I guess should be brought up is that this is actually 2 lots. So lot 7.1, as you can see right here, runs basically here along this, more or less the 40-foot buffer that we're showing. But the upon approval, those 2 lots, or just prior to approval, those 2 lots are going to be combined into 1 lot. This is, I don't understand this lot to begin with. It looks like a roadway.
Yeah.
So it must have been, if you look at old aerial photos, it looked like there was a road at one time that went all the way into the back and around the hill and somewhere, I don't know. But so the planning board wants us to, combine the 2 lots, which makes sense for everybody. So we're really talking, when we're talking about these area variances, we're talking about this as if it was 1 lot.
Right. Okay.
Well, I think that's it, and unless there's more questions.
Yeah, okay, with the drainage, what are you gonna be doing for retention ponds?
So there's an existing massive retention pond down here on lot 11 where stormwater is already directed. And what we're going to do is improve it. The stormwater from the adjacent property upstream, Majestic, comes out at there's a head wall here and a pipe, and then another head wall right here. And it's piped basically across here. I think it turns a little bit, and then it comes basically to the same area and discharges to this area on lot 11, which is a couple of isolated wetlands, and they end up working their way draining towards Plum Brook. We are proposing to relocate that line around the building rather than have it underneath the building, and have it discharged at the same location. The stormwater from the site will all be sent towards this corner over here, and there's existing riprap swales that will probably need some improvement. But we're planning on using them, and the system hasn't been designed completely yet, but we'll probably have some sort of a small wide basin / swale across here to bring this stormwater this way. There's a existing catch basin right here and a pipe that runs under this area that discharges to the forebay in this large basin. And that's the plan.
Okay, now you did mention there is a holding tank next to the existing building. Is there any, I want to say, containment for contamination, so forth, so on? Other than that, I'm gathering that's just for water or runoff. Is there anything?
So that
to,
that existing tank, good question. That existing tank will be removed and a new tank will be installed somewhere in between the transfer facility and the parking pavilion. So anything that drips onto this pavilion floor or any precipitation that does get in it, because it won't have walls on it, will be piped in double-walled pipes to this underground storage tank, which is also double-walled and interstitial monitoring for leaks and the like, in accordance with the state's regulations. Any leachate that's generated in this building will also be piped to that one tank.
okay, so really, if there is some sort of, God forbid something happens where someone accidentally throws stuff in and, in the garbage, in the sense of, oil.
Sure.
Is there an alarm system in that holding tank in the sense of oil or contamination? Or is it?
No, there wouldn't be, but it would be pumped out and taken off for disposal. And the operators are trained if they were to see oil or anything like that, in their contingency plan and in their O&M plan, they have
basically the word I'm looking for, oil separator tank.
an oil water. No, I mean, typically an oil water separator tank is only required if you're going to discharge to a sanitary sewer.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, the hauler would see the oil and then they'd have to deal with it appropriately.
Now, the tank itself that we're talking about, how often is it inspected?
Well, it's an underground storage tank and it's double walled, and it'll, off the top of my head, I know the DEC has testing requirements for underground storage tanks. I think it's every 5 years. I think it's 10 years after it's installed and every 5 years after that, something to that effect. But
Okay.
we will follow, all of state requirements, obviously.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why there isn't another alternative to doing more blacktop. Why you can't use a permeable paver like a turf stone or something like that. I understand the other variances, but that one I don't understand. Why is there no alternative to blacktop?
Well, the site coverage, I mean, I think that's a different question. I think whether it's you use a different.
Yeah, why can't you use a permeable paver instead of adding?
That would still be a site coverage variance, because gravel and any traveled roadways.
No, DEC and DEP
No,
have permeable pavers different than blacktop.
But I believe your town code, a gravel drive is considered site coverage.
I think the gravamen of this whole thing is how much pervious surfaces you have.
I'm sure we can look into, not paving some of this area if that's what the,
Well, I just don't, we're just right above the reservoir. And all the other things make sense. I understand DEC has new requirements, and I understand you need the height, and it is where it is. But I don't understand when we're right above the reservoir, and it looks like you got about a 4% grade from this property going down over a couple hundred feet. It looks like or 100 feet. It looks like you're moving 40 feet down or something like that. And I understand you have some collection systems, but off of these surfaces, it would seem that some of this stuff will end up in the reservoir. And I would hate to just put more blacktop down if we didn't have to. And I don't see why you can't just use a permeable paver. I don't see any reason. I don't think there's a big cost difference, and I don't understand it.
I believe they'd still be seeking the variance though, because our code defines site coverage 170-3 as off-street parking and loading facilities, including access drives, whether paved or unpaved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a question I had for you, Tom, whether gravel or pervious pavers or anything make a difference on site coverage. So it will not.
All right. 170, what was the site, Tom?
It's 170-3 definitions, site coverage, and it's synonymous with lot coverage.
So regardless of the surface, the variance would be the same.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can look into alternatives in certain areas. As we get into this with the stormwater, the SWIP, we've already been in contact with the DEP. So we have to go through their approvals also for the stormwater issues.
Yeah. My concern is the reservoir. For those
I
of
hear you. We understand that, but like I think per your definition, whether we use impermeable we use pavers that have holes in them. I can't, or gravel. It doesn't really matter. We still have the site coverage issue.
it doesn't matter to the definition, but it matters to
No, I
what
hear
actually occurs.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you. It's just we
Yeah.
would need the variance even if we didn't put any asphalt down.
Oh, you're saying with no change, you need the 9% variance.
Correct.
Correct.
But I think your suggestion is a good one, and I think we're willing to consider permeable pavers. So as we move to site plan, we'll incorporate that.
That would solve my issues.
Thank you.
One thing I'm looking at also is you do have a plan for proposed vehicle movement.
Yeah.
Maybe you just put that up on, could you put that up on screen for a minute?
I can. Yep. Let me get that. Where is it?
It seems to be color coded, I guess, with the red being the larger tractor trailers and then blue and green being residential vehicles and
Yeah,
smaller commercial vehicles. Is that what we were talking about here?
I think so. I need to,
Yeah, sorry, you need to see it. I know. These are quite involved plans. I know going through them, it took me some time to figure out what's going on here.
yeah. I didn't have that open, so I had to open it up.
Yeah, I think that was a plan that the planning board wanted us to include to show that the movement of the vehicles.
Yeah. Got it, but now, for whatever reason.
And there you go.
That's it.
Okay. That was a fight.
There we go.
Yeah, so the red is the trailers. So this is what's called the tunnel. It's in the back of the transfer station. It's at a lower elevation than the tipping floor, which is up here. So this shows that the trailers can pull back in here and make this turn and get into the building. And that's why we need to be able to use all this space, because they just wouldn't be able to make that turn.
And then where do they exit the building? Do they exit from?
They exit right here. It's not
Okay.
shown, but they would come out here and either park the trailer in here and unhook the if it's just a yard horse, or if it's a tractor that's going to take the trailer away, they would just pull straight out and go.
And how do they get to the scale?
So they don't need to get to the scale. So there'll be a scale in the tunnel. So they'll be weighed, and they have a tare weight for all of their trailers. So they would weigh them there, and then they have the weight, and then off they go. They don't have to go back across the scale.
Okay.
So yeah, and so these other colors, as you can see, these are all coming inbound. The blue being the smaller vehicles, whether it's as they like to call a mom and pop, a small hauler who's going to empty things by hand, they would pull in over here, and residential customers would also pull in there. The green represents the larger vehicles, and they would back into one of these four bays here.
Okay. So I don't know if like putting down pavers or something like that, I mean, can tractor trailers drive over pavers as easy as asphalt? Does that make any difference?
I think they can. And it all depends on whether or not they can hold up to the weight.
They're H20 loaded the same way as blacktop. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sure there's areas on the site that we can look at doing other things than just asphalt.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, the more water we can retain on the site or have it go into the ground here as opposed to run off makes sense, obviously.
Sure.
Okay.
So Bart, are you suggesting that should be a condition of this, or?
I'm suggesting that if I were to have a motion now, I would move to approve all the variances so long as we received a letter from the neighbor who is residentially zoned that they don't object to the 10-foot setback, and that there's no additional square footage of impervious parking or drives. So in other words, they can, whatever they have now, obviously they can keep, and if whatever they want to do in the future, if they're going to add more, then it should be pervious pavers. And I'm not counting roofs and things like that. So I'm just saying areas that they're moving around, because the roofs are always going to be impervious, and they can't help that.
So any roadway that was hard pack or milling would be?
That is considered to be pervious by both DEC and DEP. So I kind of got started on this because their letter I thought was misleading when they said that that's impervious, because that's not how it's defined by our regulatory agents. So frankly, it works the same. The concrete pavers are stronger than the blacktop if you put them on enough good underlying materials. And they can choose where they use them and use whatever square footage they have now. Like I'm just really, I don't know how many of you live near the reservoir like I do, but it was green this year pretty early. It's starting to look a little ugly. I think we need to be as cautious as we can with putting more pollutants in our drinking water. And so I wouldn't be happy adding more impervious surfaces that we didn't have to add.
Now, I do have a question that has nothing to do with in front of us. When they're doing all this work, is the recycling facility still be open?
So the plan is to keep the existing facility open as long as they can. So at some point, there'll probably be a break where we won't be able to operate. But the plan is to continue operating over here while construction is underway over here and over here. You know, if they may have to reduce the amount of material coming through the facility. You know, summer sanitation has, you know, there are other options for them, not as convenient, but so the plan is to continue operating, yes.
Yeah, because the fact that how I'm looking at this, I mean, with little experience that I have in construction, building this facility and the current facility now, you know, they overlap, and where are people going to, you know, bring in construction debris and dump it, or they have to go to a different facility?
At some point, they may have to shut down. We're working through how that operation will take place, but the plan is to continue to operate as long as possible during construction.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant at this point in time? Does the applicant have anything additional to say before I bring this out to the public? Any other comments or questions, issues?
Not at this time.
Okay. So why don't we put this out to the public? Paul, if you could just open up the lines, or if there's anybody online with us now, anybody would like to call in regard to this application, we would like to hear from you. Is there anybody online with us right now who would like to speak in regard to this application?
All right, and I have nobody on the YouTube side either.
Okay. I see an Angela and a Dominic online with us. Do they want to comment in regard to this application, or how are they associated with this application? No? Okay, not getting any response there.
I know Angela is my associate, so I believe
okay.
that's her.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And how about Dominic? Is he related to this application at all, or?
I have no comment at this time.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Okay. And Paul, you don't have anybody calling in? Nobody who wishes to comment in regard to the application?
No, I do not.
Okay, we'll give it another couple of seconds here, then we're going to move on.
And that light on.
Okay, I think we're going to move on then if nobody wishes to speak from the public. Any further questions from the board or any discussions we want to have amongst the board members? I mean, you know, let me start from myself here. You know, the planning board has taken a look at this and has given their blessing, so to speak, to proceed with this. We could certainly, if we agree to grant the variances, we can put conditions as discussed. I think that because this is necessitated by the DEC, I certainly understand that they have to do these things, and I think a lot of them are improvements. So I don't think I'm really adverse to the application.
Neither am I.
Yeah. Any comments from anybody else? Bill, Tom, Bart, any further comments?
No, I'm good.
I just want to go back to the pervious for a minute. So understandably, there are different definitions, right? So if the definition is that a hard pack or millings or is considered pervious, right, by DEC is, but in effect, is in terms of a flow rate or would be much less pervious, correct?
Well, it depends on, you know, how much millings you have and what
Right.
type of dirt you have. But you know, they do obviously test different materials and determine flow rates, but that's kind of not the point. People are, when you do these applications, people draw a line between pervious and impervious. And the line is drawn by DEP and DEC as millings being impervious, and whether they accept 30% or 50% of the water or 90% of the water, that's where kind of where they draw that line. So that's the natural place where most boards draw that line. And while our code doesn't really have this in the site coverage definition, it's the reason you talk about site coverage is generally what happens with the stormwater. That's the main reason we go through this exercise. So our code might be a little outdated, but the main purpose is that, you know, we're in an area where we need to protect New York City drinking water. And that's, you know, I think it's easy to do here. And I don't think it's barely any cost to applicant. So I'd like to err on the side of cautiousness.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of clarify the point even moving forward, right? So that if the way, for example, in a gravel driveway would be considered in lot coverage, even though it is pervious. So there would be no disincentive for someone to pave it because it's already essentially considered impervious by our code in a sense.
Yeah, so you're 100% correct, but you know, where we're in a situation where someone's asking for a variance and to go farther in one direction, you know, that's where it's in front of us. And when you look at the test, it's, you know, is there an alternative? And so that's, you know, that's where I am. But I certainly get your point. That's not how the definition I would have if I were writing this code.
Well, right. That's why I think we should define it better.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm just looking at this application, but I get your point overall.
One thing I just thought of, there was some mention that I guess if there's rainwater or, you know, storm water on top of the trucks and they might leach material, do certain parts of the lot have to be impervious in order to collect that water that might have to be sent off-site or treated? If we're putting pervious pavers in that area,
No,
we don't want leaching into
we wouldn't
the
do
ground. What do we have to? How does that work?
no, we would not. That would be one area where we will certainly not put the impervious or the
Put the
pervious
pervious
pavers
right.
in. Those areas, the current area is concrete and it contains any water that comes in contact with it and gets into the tank. And likewise, the parking pavilion will be paved and will be impervious, and we will collect any water, and that will be taken off site for treatment.
Okay, those areas have to be impervious.
Yeah.
Okay,
They're not that big, and we're not gonna put it in the ground.
okay.
Now you're talking about every time I hear is blacktop. Is these areas going to be concrete?
Concrete or blacktop, yeah. Probably concrete, I would think. Yes.
So just kind of further to the point is when some of these trucks that come in there, we have people who load them who lack the awareness. And while there can be DEC monitors in the place, and while I'm sure the applicant has best practices in place, stuff kind of leaches out the back of the truck when it's pulling in, when it's there. And that's why they have these leachate areas in the parking areas. And when you're inside the buildings, so that you collect it. But when you're on the drives and you're in the stuff, there's times that people throw the wrong thing in the back of the truck. And it's a really steep property. It's a really big grade going down the drinking water. So that's, and I understand that some of this is kind of planning board considerations, but I just think with the site coverage, that's the reason why I am where I am, and applicant seems to have no problem with it.
I don't think we have any objection as long as it's like we're feasible. So the places that, like Rich indicated, that are not feasible and aren't, as for any of these new areas. But I don't think we have any objection. I think your concern is if it's new, you would like us to put the permeable pavers, which I think we're willing to do as long as it's feasible.
And I'm just saying no additional square footage, so you can move it around however you want to move it around.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion the board wants to have in regard to this? Any further questions of the applicant? Okay, does the applicant have anything else before we vote on this?
No, we appreciate your taking the time and moving it along because we are anxious to get going and comply with the current regulations.
We are trying to facilitate this for you because we know, you have requirements, and I know planning board has looked at this, so that definitely, I think, will help the decision somewhat.
We appreciate that.
I do have one question. When everything's all approved, when do you plan on breaking ground?
I think very shortly thereafter,
Yeah.
as soon as we get a building permit and,
Well, and we need to go through the DEC approval too, so
So we're talking next year or this year?
we
Well,
don't
this
know
year's
that
almost
whatever the
over,
timing of our approvals, but as soon as possible.
probably next summer.
Okay, we're not talking this year. All right, I'm just curious.
No.
Well, this year would only be a month, so it would be very difficult, especially with COVID,
Right.
unfortunately.
And you probably have frozen ground coming also, so.
Yeah, it won't be this year.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's time to vote. Unless someone has an objection, we're going to proceed with a vote.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I want to make we should have a motion for the type of action first.
Type 2?
Okay,
Second,
I'm sorry, who was that second?
that was Arnie.
I did.
Oh, thank you, Arnie.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Harden,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
You have a motion regarding the application and any conditions we may put on it or denial of the application.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application. I'd like to move to approve all requested variances on the condition that applicant provides a letter from the residentially zoned neighbor that they do not object to the project and that they've seen the plans, and that no additional square footage of impervious parking and driveways are added from what exists today.
Might I make just one further comment? For variance number 2, they were originally requesting a 4-foot variance. I believe they are now requesting a 7-foot variance.
Right,
So,
that's true.
Mr. Lansky, are you does your motion?
I'm in agreement with that 7-foot variance, and with all the other requested variances as outlined on their memorandum.
Okay.
Second.
Denise, that was Tom's making the second.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Mr. Gio?
Aye.
I would just, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Snyder.
I just would ask as the letter from Majestic, just because I don't know if they would put it in formal, I don't know what kind of, it's kind of a sort of precarious condition to put us in, but I mean, we are willing to say that we've discussed it with them, and I've spoken to one of the representatives of Somer Sanitation, and they've spoken to Majestic and they're in favor of it. And so I'm willing to put that on the record. Getting a letter sometimes is a difficult thing for people to do. Not everybody likes to do that, but I am willing to put on the record that the Somer Sanitation representative, Mike Fiorella, has indicated to me that he's spoken to Majestic, who owns that lot, and they don't have any objection to the project.
Anyone else want to field this one, or should I?
Well, Bart, it's up to you if you want to modify.
I would accept an I would accept an affidavit from the owner of Somer Sanitation saying that the neighbor has received all the application materials and has reviewed them and does not object to them.
Okay, we can give you an affidavit.
Give me a sworn affidavit, and yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I mean, the adjoining property owner has definitely been notified from for the
Exactly.
zoning meeting, and they had the opportunity to respond, but so it's
he can give an affidavit that he's spoken to him and they've had no
And
objection.
that the neighbor doesn't object to, and specifically the reduction, because I want to be clear with the board. You have a 50 foot and then a 40 feet. So we're going from 90 feet down to 12 feet. So that's a substantial thing. And I don't have a problem with it, but the person who bought a piece of property thinking they're going to build houses, I just want him to be on board, right? Because I don't think that's an unreasonable request. And I also understand council's point in that you don't want to have someone be able to hold you over a wagon, hold you over a barrel. And so as long as that person doesn't object, if we want to put it in an affidavit, I don't have an issue with that.
Thank you.
okay. And Tom, does your I think you seconded. Does your second
Yep.
stand in?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Gio?
Aye.
Mr. Harden?
Aye,
Mr. Lansky?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Aye.
Chairman Canestra?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Conditions indicated.
thank you.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Okay, so then last item on the agenda this evening would be the approval of the minutes from our October 2020 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to adopt by consensus. All in favor?
Aye.
aye,
Aye.
I'm recusing.
Okay, Arnie's recusing. Anybody opposed? Okay, we'll consider the minutes adopted from October 2020. Want everybody to know that our next meeting is scheduled for December 15th, 2020, third Tuesday of December. Right now, we have no applications pending. We thought we would. So whether we have the meeting or not depends, of course, upon if we have any applications to address at that time. Any further questions or anything else? Any other business we have to attend to?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so I guess we're going to then close the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Everybody stay healthy and take care. And we'll hopefully see everybody next month.
Hello.
You.
Okay.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.